Welcome to another episode of Ferrofan Focus. In this series, we're speaking with some of music's brightest pioneers and power players from all corners of the industry, bringing you the best advice and insights. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Ferrofan. Ferrofan is a CRM built specifically for artists and the teams that support them. So make sure you head over to ferrofanmusic.com to learn more about how we're helping artists grow, understand, and nurture their fan base, and how we can do the same for you. My colleague Sean recently spoke with the Director of Marketing at Two Lost, Damien Ritter. Alongside his role at the distributor, he wears many hats, including being a music industry executive, entrepreneur, and former co-founder of the influential independent hip-hop label Funk Volume. So, as you can imagine, this conversation covers a lot of ground, from distro deals to defining what makes a good song, and Damien's reflections on the current state of the industry. So let's focus up and dive straight into the conversation.
Let's get into distro deals. Obviously, you working at Two Loss and got a chance to see so much of the game from that side, more than what you already were aware of. I would love to know, just for the artists and managers looking for those type of distro deals, uh, what? Of course, everybody has their own. Like every distro company has its own things that it might look at in particular. But like typically, when should an artist start looking at a distro deal, or what makes them more attractive to a distributor in general?
Yeah, well, I think here at Two Laws, we're fairly conservative, and a lot of the deals are based off your prior or existing streaming history, right? So it's part algorithmic, part not. There's definitely, it's a human touch to this, and considering other factors beyond just like the raw streaming data. But we're fairly conservative, and I think that's good for the indie artists to take deals because there's a higher likelihood that you're going to recoup and start making some money on the back end. Uh, and the deals are flexible too, right? Like you have the ability to typically have several different options, depending on how much money you need up front, how long you want to be in the deal. It could just be a 1 year term, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, up to 10 years. So having that flexibility and kind of being able to just kind of see your menu of options, and evaluating like your current needs in terms of cash flow, and what you want to invest back into your next project. I think that's a dope option for artists. But the option is really only available to people that already have some existing traction. So if you're an artist listening to this and you don't really have much streaming momentum yet, then you're probably not going to be eligible for a distribution deal until you get a little traction. But there's people that we've done repeat deals with. So they just kind of started out small. Maybe they got a deal and it was like $5,000, $6,000. They invested that into their music and started doing better. Maybe their next deal was 20,000, something like that, and they just continue to invest. So you take these shorter term loans that don't have as high of a interest, and it's just a much safer way. Sometimes it's great to have an alternative method to funding your career than an aggressive major label deal, for sure.
Gotcha. So just to make sure I understand a couple things. So there's a difference between, and it can be done either of these ways, but you could do a deal based off of streaming revenue that already is coming in. So you could basically use old songs as collateral, right?
Yeah.
But you can also do a deal on a new project that doesn't exist yet as well.
Yes, or a combination of both, right? So you can do a deal on existing catalog, like if say you're making like 5,000 a month on your existing catalog, we'll analyze that streaming data and present some options. It could just be like a 1 year licensing deal. It could be 3 year, 5 year. You could do part of your catalog. You could do, we can carve it up so many different kind of ways. And that deal could also include like your next project. So it could be your catalog plus a future. And then we're not as aggressive with futures deals, but we do some futures deal where it's just on future music. We just kind of look at your prior history, your prior streaming data. But it's that's a tougher calculation. It's more risk on our end, because I'm sure what you've seen, especially if it's an artist coming from a major, their first indie project. The majors typically do things to streams to make it look bigger than what it is, and it's a surprise to a lot of artists. Like once they get off the major, you know what their true streaming capacity is for their current fan base. Um, there's typically a heavy dip unless you've built your fan base a certain way. But there's a lot of, I don't know about bots or whatever, but labels have a lot of access to playlists, and once you get out of favorability of those playlists, like if you built your streaming history on like playlist support, once people put a plug on that, you're going to see a huge dip. So that's why whether you major or indie, you want to build a community that is invested in your music and constantly streams your music, adds it to their own personal playlist, and you're not dependent upon, third party playlists or, some of the editorials that Spotify has.
Distribution deals are actually one of the best arguments for continuing to care about your streams and boost your streams in a direct to fan climate where we speak that language and encourage that in art to artists. It's like, yes, we don't want you to only think about DSPs, Spotify, etc. You want to bring that direct to fan income in and grow that for sure. But the ability to get loans, a highly favorable loan, right, based on just your streams, and they're not trying to take anything else. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot recently, where it's like if you cut that off, it's not that you can't win, but why cut that possibility off? The discovery of DSPs and the potential to get a very favorable loan.
Yeah, 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 and it's unfortunate sometimes that like artists, and maybe it's just the situation they find themselves in. They try to play some of these distributors too, because let's just say it is a futures deal, and they're looking at your prior history and like, okay, we're comfortable putting up 50,000 for your next project. Some of these artists, they'll just turn in a whack project real quick, get that 50,000, and then move on to the next thing, as opposed to seeing the long term vision of this. But there's a lot of artists that play that game, or maybe they're in a tough spot and they just feel like they need that. But that's definitely a short term play if that's how you're moving, because you're definitely not going to be able to come back.
Yeah, I mean the compound of doing good business is something that you can't really underestimate. So doing bad business and not giving people a return, or like where it seems to be purposeful or lazy, I think, because some people understand. Like sometimes there's an L that has to be taken, cool, but when it doesn't seem like you really put that effort in and cutting off, I don't, I don't see the benefit of that. But I do say, one, a lot of artists that I've talked to don't quite understand the difference between a distro and a label. So they have a stick it to the label mentality. With not even saying you should do that to every label, but it's just they have the stick it to the label mentality, but they're applying it to everybody that they get money from, when it's like, no, this is a completely different relationship, right? And then the other side is I have seen quite a few people say, I'm just in a tough spot. But you got to still think about the long term implications of that. It's like, if I'm in a tough spot, cool, I take this, but I still have to do good by my word on this before I move on. And now I'm out of the tough spot. It's not I just took the money and now I'm out. It's like, nah, now you got to work a side job for a little bit. They just look at it like that until you out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that most of the stories that you hear that are negative, it's about things that happen to artists.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to have a panel of like the things that artists do to other people, right? And there's a lot of that happening in distribution companies, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're not as aggressive with futures deals. One, they're hard to value, but two, it exposes you to the risk of them potentially not fulfilling their obligations or just giving us some throwaway songs to satisfy the song requirements and then just running off with the bread.
Mm,
So
got it. So if you were managing an artist, which you don't anymore, what would be some of the general key points that you would look for in a deal in general, in distro or beyond? Like what would be your mentality in general in terms of how you would position yourself for funding, and maybe are there any particular sources of funding that you would look at now that what you know now today?
Yeah, I was still, you want to take as little as possible because you want, the bigger percentage. And I feel like, there's still some people that I would argue with that say, you need a lot of money to get started or you need X amount of dollars to move. When my mindset is more, let's bootstrap this thing, make a little bit of money, pour it back into the business, make a little bit of money, pour it back into the business, rinse and repeat. And that can start with very little money, especially today where you have, the ability to even sell merch for, if you're drop shipping, for very little startup costs, right? So if I'm looking for a deal, I'm looking for the right team really to support the music. Do I feel like I'm a priority at this entity? Can they pitch my stuff? Can they provide other opportunities? That's what I'm more interested in as opposed to bread up front. Unless I was working with an artist that really needed it. But again, I just can't see that. I just can't see that being a possibility because even if we don't have bread right now, we can sell a few shirts a month, make a few $100s, put it back into the business, run some ads, and it should just grow. Like if you're continuing to build your fan base and continue to put out great content, like I'm not saying you're going from a 0 to 100 in a month, but we can go 0 to 2. You know what I'm saying? We can go 2 to 5. We can go 2 to 6. Like as long as we're making progression every single month, I don't think I ever need a huge budget, until you get big enough to comfortably take some bigger swings that make sense for you.
Now, shifting though, I got to get into some questions in regard to this year that we just had. All right,
Okay.
2024.
Uh huh.
Kendrick Drake beef aside, who do you think took the biggest L? As an artist, that could be, an exec, a entity. But and also I should say Diddy aside then too.
Man, I don't a particular artist. I mean, I just think major labels in general are taking the biggest L with because of all the layoffs. Uh, I think they're really putting their business going forward in a bad position because they let go of a lot of people that had relationships with the artist that the artist really depended on. That they were their point of contact. I know they let go a lot of artists too, but I just think in general, I just don't know what the future holds. I believe that major labels will continue to exist, but they really need to kind of reinvent themselves because right now it seems like they're just thriving off of like catalog and like trends, like random viral songs. There's no artists being built. They're just extracting as much value as they can from catalog and then just artists that are here for the moment. So I think they really need. I mean, it's not my concern because I don't work for a major, and actually, their troubles work out best for us because one, the artists that they're letting out of their deals, they got to go somewhere, right? So hopefully, 2 Loss is a home for them. And now, while they're laying people off, like we're actually hiring, so we could pick from the cream of the crop. We're gonna get access to the best talent. We can take our time and really find the right fit for our company. So I'm not that mad. I just think it's sad to see some of the decisions, some of the short term decisions that get made at these major labels because the CEO's probably only worried about quarter to quarter growth because the CEO probably not going to be there that long anyway. But to get that bonus, the incentives is typically quarter to quarter or year over year, where I think that ultimately you got to start thinking longer than that. But those aren't the decisions that are going to be made because they probably won't even be there. So,
That made sense. A lot of sense. I mean, I think you can go. That's a whole nother conversation in itself. It's in and of itself. Label politics, labels operations, and how they can benefit and not benefit an artist. But a lot of times, it's way less. about the evil is just the same way the artists would act the same way if they were working in those same positions. Let's
Yeah.
just well, it's just human behavior. What is the incentive, right? If I get my bonus this way, this is how it works, right? If I'm not going to be here, what do y'all do? Is like, I don't really care what that person say. I'm not going to be here. Like, it's the same type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
A job is a job. I'll say that.
Yeah. Now, but we picked up some really dope talent, within the last few months. Got the homie Zay that's on the label operations team now, or the label services team. He came over from Cash Money, has some experience at some at RCA, I believe. Like, we're really starting to beef up the team to better support artists and the music that comes out through Two Law. So I'm excited for the year. I just think the major labels took the biggest L this year for sure. The best marketing campaign. Um, I'm just gonna shout out a few artists that I've seen do some things really well. I think Kennedy Ryan is a young lady. I think based in Atlanta. She has a really strong email storytelling campaign. Like if you subscribe to her email, you know what I mean. But I think they do email really well. So if you're gonna follow somebody when it comes to email marketing, I would suggest Kennedy Ryan. Um, the young cat that you guys introduced me to, that I've been following ever since you introduced me to, Truth the Bull, uh, does a really good job at differentiating himself. He's got the whole Muppet thing going, and it's a dope song. I think he really. I think some artists kind of move from song to song too fast. Like even if something's working, they'll put something else out. Um, he is definitely riding the wave of that one song. They need the hype me up song, and it's just more content. Because that song to me, I mean, I don't know what defines a hit to most people, but to me, that song is a great song and more that has a lot of life left into it. So, the fact that he continues to promote it, I think, is a really smart thing because the last time I looked, I think it probably had I don't know, between 1 million to 2 million streams on Spotify. But, I think that song has the potential to go 10 million, 20 million. So I like what he's doing there. So many artists do the same thing that even though there's a lot of artists that are trying to make music or putting out music, I feel like it's easy to differentiate yourself these days. All he did was, throw a few Muppets in the video, and you will never forget. I don't think you'll forget him. Not just do that. He does it in a dope way. I think he does it in a dope way. Even if yeah, it's authentic, and the videos are edited really well. Even when he did his on the radar performance, he brought the Muppets. Um, I'm curious to know what that means to him and why he has that. But I think he does a really good job. Um, I always got to shout out Snow the product because she's been the most consistent from the funk volume era all the way till now. I mean, I'm sure there's other artists that have been consistent too, but Snow's continue to progress and have even more success over the years. Really leaning into the Latina side of what she's doing a lot of collaborations with Latino artists. She has her podcast. She just stays on. She's always touring, always doing the podcast, always engaging on social media. I don't think I've known a time where she's taken any time off. And I just admire that stamina. Um, and I think she's really tapped in. She knows her audience. She knows what she wants to do. So I always got to shout out Snow because she's been here for a minute, crushing it and continuing to rise and have more people stream her music, more people come to her shows. So Soda Product is dope.
Dope, dope. Yeah, that's a good one. I don't hear her name brought up enough actually. Dope, dope. So, last question I want to ask: How do you think replay value is the most important factor in defining what a good song is?
It's the most important factor of valuing a catalog. I know that. Because it's not a when we value catalog. I'm not. I didn't write the algorithm. I don't know. But what I do know is Like if you are making music like just for the moment, maybe you're making music that capitalizes on like current trends, but those trends change from month to month or year over year. You know, if you're making songs today that people don't listen to next year, when we value your catalog, it's going to factor in like a large amount of decay because that, you know, people aren't going to continue to listen to the music. But if you make music that people continue to listen to, your catalog is going to be so much more valuable because, you know, if there's been limited decay from, say you put out the song 5 years ago and, you know, people are still listening to it, you know, we can project that for the next 5 years people are going to continue to listen to it, so the value of your catalog is going to be higher, so we can offer you a bigger advance. So I would really think about that when you're making music. You want to make music that lives and your fans continue to play it year after year after year, because that ultimately is going to be probably the biggest contributing factor to how people value your catalog should you ever want to sell it or take out a loan against it. So quality music is key. Quality music is key, and good storytelling and stuff that really resonates with people, so that, you know, they don't take it out of their playlist in a month or so.
Mm. That's weird because I don't know. We skip from replay value to quality music, which means they're not exactly the same, although they can cross over. And when you and the way
Well,
you
it's kind of the same. Like, what song do you think has great replay value that's not a quality song? I mean, if you find something, it's going to be outliers, right?
we just
You
had
might.
this. I just went through this debate, man. I got some. All right, Mr. Morale. I think because of the lack of like I'm going to play this all the time value is obviously a quality project and very artistic and it's high on that side. But there's sometimes you don't want to be in that emotion, right? There's movies that you can watch a lot of times and you don't even think it's as good as a really good movies, but I like to play. Matter of fact, I don't even want to play a deep good movie sometimes because I'm doing other stuff, right?
So what you're saying is, and I would agree with you, there are quality songs that don't have replay value, but I don't think there are that many songs that have replay value that aren't quality songs.
I would say you have to have some level of quality to have replay value for sure. Some
Yeah.
level of quality, but the quality is can be a little bit more shallow in the replay value category than the pure like art music. And the reason I say that is we've actually shifted towards an era where lower quality music can thrive. And the reason is how consumers even think of and consume music. Now, if I'm playing a video game and I'm DMing, right, and I'm watching a movie and I got some music on in the background, which sounds crazy and chaos, right?
Mhm.
It can be the music doesn't have to be as good versus the era when you're just like sitting down, headphones, and you're focused on the music and it needs to entertain you from multiple elements. And I hear younger people say this, which is crazy for me to say younger people, but like teens and all that stuff, like when they say a vibe, right? Like they care so much about vibes, and vibes just can mean this is good background music. This is how I'm trying to feel right now. I don't care too much about the lyrics or anything like that. As a matter of fact, like I heard this group of kids, they were reviewing a project that I was working on. We released it. They loved the project, but one of the guys critiqued something, and everybody kind of agreed. They didn't like how the artist would go from one song and one vibe into another, into another, into another. And in my mind, all right, a little bit more old school than them. I'm like, it's because he's telling a story. He's taking you through an experience. But they're like, nah, I want a playlist, right? As an album. I just want to stay in one vibe and another. And that type of mentality, like it doesn't completely kill music, but it definitely is less demanding of the quality. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, so I agree with you, but at that point, I just don't think people care. Like, so that same song probably would, like, if you don't care about that stuff, like, there's not particular songs that you go back to. You're probably just looking for a vibe. You might listen to this playlist because it has that vibe, but unbeknownst to you, whoever's curating that playlist is swapping songs in and out you don't even know. You like the playlist, it's a vibe, but I still don't think those individual songs have replay value because you probably didn't even realize that the artist changed 5 times. You thought it was the same artist because that playlist had a vibe. So you don't even know how to go back to that song because you don't even know who it was at that point. So that's what I mean. But if you have quality music that really resonates with people and they choose to go back and listen to, to I think Kennedy Ryan, the young lady that I think she makes some really good quality music, and she tells good stories behind it. So I think it's going to stick with her fans. I think that's what artists should focus on if they want to build catalog.
Marketing music as an artist isn't just about getting attention, it's about keeping it. Anyone can get lucky enough to go viral, but Forever Fan gives you the tools to build real, lasting connections. Instantly get access to a mini site that allows you to spotlight your unique brand to stand out from the rest. Use direct-to-fan management tools that allow you to understand who your fans are and where they are, so you can send curated texts and emails. And then create automated engagement campaigns that keep every fan feeling special, because Forever Fan continues to work for you 24/7 so you can make a good impression on current and future fans at all times. Your music deserves to be heard, and your fans deserve to feel connected from their first listen to forever.